has particular skills and strengths that can be helpful in the workplace. Did you know that knowing which skills you excel in is a skill in and of itself? This is called self-awareness, and it's all about having an accurate view of yourself as a worker. We're going to be hearing more about it from Shannon Wells, who teaches work experience at Folsom Lake College and is part of the New World of Work team. Shannon is going to help us understand more about the 4 primary traits of self-awareness. Is realistic about personal strengths, skills, and areas for growth. Sees own responsibility in actions and words, understands and responds to the needs of others, seeks to control own emotions and behavior even under stress, and tries to do the right thing. Strives to improve work-appropriate manner, and learns and applies guidelines or rules of the work setting. Looks for work that is a good match for personal strengths and skills. William and Pazzi will be joining us to discuss how their own self-understanding has helped them in the workplace. Shannon, what is the first trait of self-awareness?
The first trait is being realistic about personal strengths, skills, and areas for growth.
So in order to be self-aware, one needs to be aware of their strengths as well as areas of growth?
Yes, being aware of our areas of growth and development is just as important as being aware of our strengths and self-awareness.
So why is it important for employers to hire employees who are aware of areas where they need improvement?
Because employers want employees who they know if they give a job, the employee is going to know which capabilities they have to execute the outcome. But they also want employees who know which areas of development they may need help in. So if there's a particular area that's not that employee's strength, knowing that that employee will leverage their team members who might be strengths in those areas to bring in them for their expertise and talents to get the job done. This also helps the employer to know that when they give the task, the job will be done. And so the employer doesn't have to micromanage or really view that person's everyday activities with a microscope.
And William, do you have any work experience where you started to develop more self-awareness regarding your strengths and areas for improvement?
Yeah, I have this job as a server where it's at this like kind of really small cafe, and I took the job originally because I always thought that servers were kind of like performers in a sense, and I myself am a performer theatrically, and I've always loved like being in front of people, and so I thought it would be an easy job because I love meeting people and working with them, and it turns out that it wasn't quite as easy as I thought it would be because the meeting people and working with strangers was super easy, chatting was great, but I was really terrible at taking orders, and I was just like so slow at writing that I would be halfway through like chatting with someone about their day and realize that I didn't hear anything that they had told me about what food or like if they wanted toast or wheat or white. And eventually got to a point where I just realized I had to hold back on talking to people as much because it was really detrimental to the rest of my technical part of my job, where I needed to take the orders and make sure that the food got prepared correctly. Because I mean, like, that's really why people are going to a cafe. So I just ended up having to like rework everything that I did with the job.
It's great that you became more self-aware through it. What are some other ways we can become more self-aware, some other distinctions?
Sure. One of the distinctions that's important is understanding if we're introverts or extroverts, or a preference towards either. And really the difference between these two is how we feel energized. Introverts tend to feel energized by their own internal world, their thoughts, their feelings, their processes. They tend to be energized by quiet times of reflection. Extroverts tend to feel energized by their outside environment, their stimulus, the people that they're around, the activities, the lights, the sounds, the noise. And we're not one or the other. It's a continuum, really. And given our environment, we might have a preference towards introversion or extroversion. But really, the hallmark is, at the end of the day, how do we feel most energized?
And William, do you think that you have a tendency to be more of an introvert or more of an extrovert?
I would say definitely extrovert. There's like a tendency. I mean, I definitely have some introverted qualities, I think, sometimes. Like you say, like people have leanings towards, they tend to do one or the other and then like dabble in the other one. Like I said, I'm a performer and I like really love meeting new people, and that's like how I get a lot of my energy. And I really feel that like when I meet a new person, I kind of go off the walls a little. But definitely there are moments where, like, say if I'm really, really stressed with like homework or like a test or something that's coming up, I sometimes like to be alone and quiet and listen to music. And I don't necessarily derive energy from that, but I really enjoy that as like a sort of calming kind of thing.
And it sounds like the industry that you're interested in, acting and theater, is a really good suit for your tendencies of extroversion.
What are some other ways that, let's say you had a very stressful week. Are there ways that an introvert might want to be energized that are different from an extrovert?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so a great example is if we've had a really busy week. Let's say at work we had multiple projects with deadlines that things needed to be done in a certain time frame. Or we're at school and we've had multiple tests and that we've had to study for and we've had to complete. On Friday, how might you best feel energized? What sounds most appealing? For an introvert, quiet time might sound most appealing. I know I'm an introvert, and so the thought of being at home and no TV, no music really sounds like heaven to me. But that quiet time for reflection and thought may appeal more to introverts. Extroverts, on the other hand, may feel like a night out with friends or family, going to a restaurant, seeing a movie, maybe other activities of interest, really is more preferred. And so again, there's no right or wrong answer, but that might be an indicator of how someone might decide what they think their preference is.
And hearing you describe all of this, it sounds like it's a very important thing to know for self-awareness, because when we can energize ourselves in the best way, we're also able to be the most refreshed for work, to have our best effort in.
Yes, that's a great point.
You can get a head start on developing your self-awareness right now. Think of 5 strengths. Strengths can be things that come easily to you that don't necessarily come as easily to others, like working with computers, for example. Strengths can also be skills that others have complimented you on, whether it was a teacher, peer, supervisor, or parent. They can be topics you have a strong interest in and are very knowledgeable about. Write down each of these 5 strengths and think about what information have you used to identify them. List this information next to each strength. Now write down 5 areas that you'd like to improve in. What could you do to start to develop that skill? Write down those ideas as well. Afterwards, share your list with people who know you well to see if others agree with your self-appraisal of strengths and areas of growth. So Shannon, what is the second trait of self-awareness?
The second trait is seeing one's responsibility in action and words, understanding and responding to the needs of others, seeking to control one's emotion and behavior, even under stress, and trying to do the right thing.
That's a lot of components.
It is, but it all comes down to understanding how our actions may affect others.
And Pasi, do you have any workplace experience where you needed to demonstrate that kind of knowledge?
Yes, last year in my senior year, I worked for a sneaker company, and upon being hired, I was really excited because I love sneakers. And I found out that the manager was actually taking merchandise that was being returned from customers, and instead of restocking it and selling it at a lower price, he was reselling it to friends and family and basically pocketing the money. My peers then began to do the same thing, which was allowed by him. It was kind of weird because he was supposed to be our superior, and he was doing, this illegal activity, and I didn't feel right about it, and they kind of propositioned me to also take part in their Ponzi scheme, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be doing that, but thanks. And so I went to loss prevention just so that I could clear my name, just in case anything came back. And fortunately, when I did go, they let me know that he was already under investigation, and everyone on the team was fired, and I was not, thankfully, because I chose to do the right thing.
Wow. That's a great example of doing the right thing.
Yes.
Absolutely, especially when having so much influence from not only your superior,
Peer
but
pressure.
your peers.
Yes.
Good job keeping your integrity.
Thank you.
And Shannon, so another thing that you mentioned was an ability to handle stress. What are some tools that people could use for that?
Sure. Inevitably, at one point or another, when we're in a workplace situation, there's going to be stressful experiences. And so one strategy is if there's a situation in which we feel some intense emotion, to say something or do something, to wait at least 24 hours, maybe even 48 hours, to let yourself think about it and reflect. If after that time it's still important to say something or do something, then go ahead and do it and just make sure that it's done in a professional manner. A second strategy is to talk to someone. Talk to someone who you trust. It could be a confidant. Be able to share the emotions, information about the situation, and really process what is the best way to respond.
One of the techniques that I like to use for stress is to just kind of meditate and breathe. I find that in doing so, you kind of just remove yourself from whatever the situation is. It allows you to look at it from a different eye and just make a better decision sometimes.
That's a great strategy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have you ever been in a situation where you knew that your actions would have an effect on others, and understanding that influenced the decisions you made? Find a partner and exchange stories about times when your self-awareness helped you to act in a positive way. What is the third trait of self-awareness?
The third trait is striving to improve work-appropriate manner and learning and applying guidelines or rules of the work setting.
It makes a lot of sense that one would need appropriate behavior while at work. But does this vary from workplace to workplace?
Yes, definitely. It varies from workplace to workplace and job to job. It's really important that the employee knows what the appropriate workplace manner is in their work environment. Let's take dress, for example. A construction worker would dress very differently than a lawyer, and it's necessary for their type of work. Also, a remote worker would dress differently than someone who goes into the office.
And William, do you have work experience where you learned what exactly was appropriate for the job?
Oh, yeah. In the summers, I work as a swimming instructor for an outdoor pool. And it's actually the same place that I went to when I was a kid. Actually, when I was a kid, the swimming instructors would never get in the water. And all of us would always want them to, because it's like we're getting there at like 7 a.m. and it's like really cold. So like, get in the water, like suffer with us. And they're like, no, I don't have to. I'm the instructor. So finally, when I got to the instructor age and I took my tests and I got certified and went into instruct, I also thought that I didn't need to get in the water because I was no longer like the kid. I was like, I'm in charge. I don't have to do it. And one day our boss came in as a surprise, didn't know that the management had changed, like since when I was a kid. And actually they require people to get into the pool now. Like it's a cold, hard requirement, emphasis on cold. And so actually 2 people ended up losing their jobs because they had not been in the water at all for the entire time we were teaching. I was lucky because I was in the water that day. But I also ended up needing to, like, for myself, come clean to them that I had also been doing the same thing that everybody else did, because that was the only day that I had been in the water. And they were, like, really cool about it, but they were like, yeah, you absolutely are supposed to be in the water. Like, parents are paying for these swimming lessons. It's, like, it's a requirement. So, yeah, I ended up, like, being in the water every day since that day.
It's interesting to hear how you became aware of what the appropriate behavior was at your job. And once you changed, how did that change your job and the environment there?
Oh, well, our bosses were super happy. They were a lot more active in our instruction from that point on, because I think partly they wanted to make sure we were doing our jobs right, but also they were like very more engaged with us, and we were actually having a better time because the kids were like happier to have us there, because instead of being this like looming powerful figure that we had created ourselves, we were kind of just like in the water, like horribly cold with them, and the kids just ended up loving it a lot more than if someone was just like, you need to do this and I'm not going to.
William, this is a great example of you being open to working in a new way. You went into this job thinking that it wouldn't be a requirement to get into the water, but lo and behold, it was. But then you also were able to focus on the outcomes, and that it really helped to strengthen the relationship between the instructors and the kids.
Think of 2 jobs you're familiar with. They can be jobs that you've held, that family members have held, or that you've read a lot of information about. Compare and contrast what's considered appropriate in each of these jobs. Ask yourself questions like, what kind of clothing does this worker wear? What kind of hours is this worker expected to work? And who does this worker communicate with most? And how does that affect the style of communication? Afterwards, share your thoughts with the group to see how many job options are out there. So Shannon, what is the 4th trait of self-awareness?
The 4th trait's looking for work that is a good match for personal strengths and skills.
You know, that makes a lot of sense, because if one is working at a job where they can't use their strengths, I imagine there would be a lot of stress involved.
Yes, and it could be stressful for not just that person, but the people that they work with as well.
Now, Pazzi, do you have any experience where you were able to use some of your own strengths in the workplace?
Yes, I have always been deeply rooted in music, and my parents met in music settlement school and shortly after had me. Music has always been something that I use to express myself, and I've always found it therapeutic. So after graduating recently, my boyfriend and I decided that we wanted to use, he's also a music artist, wanted to use our music talents to give back. So we travel internationally, and we're trying to build music schools so that we can give other youth a voice and also teach them that they do have a voice, and also encourage them to pursue higher education as well.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And by contrast, do you have work experience where you just weren't as invested because you weren't using your skills as much?
Definitely. One job that really stands out for me is when I did telemarketing for a brief moment, which I did not like at all. However, my grandmother always taught me that whatever you do in life, do it with integrity. So, of course, I did the job. I did it well. I just didn't like it. So I've always encouraged people to find something that they really love to do, because you're going to be more self-motivated and you're going to be better at doing it. So.
And I really like the point you were making, too, about having a strong work ethic, but the way that you feel about your work may be a little bit different depending on your using your natural abilities.
Right. So the outcome may change too. If we're in a position where we can do a good job because we have a strong work ethic, that's wonderful. But if we're in a position where we're really able to use our strengths and our skills, and there's a consistent alignment, we might be even more successful, and the outcome may be even better.
There's a connection to it. So you want to do it. You know, you're a little more excited to do it. So the results will be different.
Find a partner and take turns interviewing one another for a job. Pick the job you're hiring for and that your partner is interviewing for. Be sure to ask your partner questions about their interest in and knowledge of the skills that the job requires. And when it's your turn to be interviewed, answer honestly. Afterwards, discuss with your partner whether you would be a good fit for the job you interviewed for.